Every day, 34 people in their 20s and 30s are diagnosed with cancer.
On the 7th of July 2015, I was one of the 34.
On the 28th of August 2008, I was one of the 34.
These are the stories of what happens afterwards.
This is AfterThoughts. Hey Alice.
Hello Toby.
So here we are for another episode of Afterthoughts, and it's a special episode of Afterthoughts because we've actually done two today. This is a double header for us, but the audience
Back to back.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like a well-oiled machine, you'd think.
Well-oiled, but still slightly clunky, perhaps.
Clunky is, and I mean that's fine. We're not really a machine, are we? We're humans.
We are humans, and well, that leads us on nicely to the storyteller that we have on the podcast today.
What a human
indeed. We are joined on the podcast today by the incredible Lauren Mahon. You might know her as the founder of the Girl vs. Cancer community. You might know her as one of Trekstock's Young Adult Ambassadors. You might know her as the host of the BBC award-winning podcast You, Me and the Big C. You might know her just from being on the internet.
And you might know her as Lauren. Like you might just be like one of her mates round the corner, and you've been to the pub with Lauren. So for all of those people who've come, like here we are. We've got Lauren has joined us today.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those achievements, and she decided to spend a couple of hours with Toby and I telling some incredible stories about her experience of breast cancer. She was diagnosed a couple of years ago, she's told us some fantastic stories, and I'm really, really excited for the audience to hear them, especially because even though she tells her story a lot, these stories aren't stories that she tells a lot. So I think it's been really fantastic to hear those.
So let's kick off with Lauren's stories. Hi, Alice.
Oh, hello, Toby. Sorry, I was just biting my fingernail.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Did you have a good go at it?
Yeah.
All sorted?
Yeah, sorry. Do you want to go again?
No, I quite like that intro. That's fine. How are you, Alice?
I'm all right, thanks, Toby. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. The sun is now shining on this, our second recording of the day, which is very exciting.
The sun is shining, and we are here with Lauren Mahon.
Yay! Hello.
Yeah, I am excited to have you here, Lauren. Lozza. How are you?
Names. I'm. Do you know what? I'm good. I was like saying to you guys before we started recording that I'm feeling well fuzzy this week, and it's that weird thing being in cancer world. It's like, am I just tired, or is it the drugs?
Right.
Is it the
classic question?
What is it? Is it all of the little brain cells that died during chemo? We just don't know. To be honest, it makes a difference when the sun's shining, doesn't it?
So much, especially in these weird like COVID lockdown times, because that's another thing as well. Like, is it the drugs? Am I tired? Is it because we've been in lockdown for like a million years, or is it all of the above?
I'm actually thinking, I've actually said to my mates, I'm coming up to my 36th birthday, but I'm holding my birthday at 34 because I lost a year to cancer and I've lost a year to the pandemic.
I'm doing exactly the same.
I'm 2 birthdays in my 30s.
Lauren, we are so excited to have you on Afterthoughts. I also think, can I just say this from a personal point of view as well? Because I remember, Lauren, you were one of when I started getting to know the cancer community and things, you were one of the first people I kind of got to know through Trekstock and things like that, and then through You, Me and the Big C, and listening to you on there, and it's just so great to have you on the podcast and have you here with us today. I can't wait to hear some of your stories.
What you've just said to me there, Toby, about being one of the first people. Alice is one of the first people that I ever spoke to. And as soon as I put out on social media, I've got tit cancer, Alice was like, hey, hun, yo. And
it's really funny. I remember,
it was so important because you were the first person to message me, babe. And what you actually said to me was, it's really brave what you've done, because I feel like it was such a big moment. I didn't tell anyone for ages. I told everyone the week before chemo because I was like, well, I'm about to get very bored. So I was I wanted to kind of, you know, control the narrative, but it was really refreshing to have someone go, I've done what you've done. Yeah. I'm here. But then also someone that when you're going through the first motions and you don't have a clue, and because we're young adults, we don't know any other people really who've gone through it. And someone to be able to turn around to me as you so eloquently did and said, oh, darling, there's smooth and there's chemo smooth.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And then when I started to be like a dolphin, I quote Alice on it all the time. I'm like, those words, there's smooth and then there's chemo smooth.
So true.
Never a true word spoken.
Let's do some quick fire questions.
Let's dive into some quick fire questions.
All right, Lauren. Let's do this.
And Alice, I'm up first for the quick fire questions, aren't I? Fantastic. Okay, Lauren, kicking them off with your quick fire questions. Lauren, could you please give us the pronouns that you use?
She.
Who do people say you look like?
Vicky McClure.
What film defines your childhood?
Ooh, Godzilla.
Wow.
That you know the one I mean with what's his chops? He goes out with Sarah Jessica Parker, the old school one. Do you know what I mean? Like the rubbish one.
Yeah. But who is that? Who goes out?
Actually, do you know what? I think. Actually, I'm going to change it. 10 Things I Hate About You.
Okay.
Ah, a classic. Yeah. Who's your hero?
My sister. She is.
What's your favourite nickname that you have?
I know everyone knows me on socials as Lozza, but Lolly is my family nickname. I'm Lolly to my family. Yeah, so that would be my fave.
If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
I mean, it's tattooed on my arm, so it's going to have to be Slide Away by Oasis.
I mean, also dedicated to you by the man himself.
Dying off that for a very long time, yeah.
Roller coasters, love them or hate them?
Do you know what? It depends how high and how upside down.
Yeah, more roller coaster.
And also how secure.
You like a roller coaster that's kind of like flat. So you like a monorail.
I like trains.
Big fan of the DLR, but the moment when it goes.
What's your favourite way to eat a potato?
Mashed.
Yes. Agreed.
And Lauren, could you please give us just a one-liner which sums up your diagnosis for us, please?
Diagnosed with tit cancer at age 31, had a lumpectomy, cancer-free. Yay!
The diagnosis story we tell is often very, very rehearsed. We become really, really good at telling that story. But actually, that's often the beginning of the narrative. And there's lots of brilliant stuff, lots of really interesting stuff that comes afterwards. So, Lauren, I'm going to hand over to you so that we can hear a story of beyond that diagnosis.
So I guess... for me, you know, people like we say, we talk about this diagnosis story and this moment of where the world falls from beneath you. But actually, the diagnosis starts, I think, when you leave the hospital and you're back in your life. And when I left the hospital, I remember vividly my brother just putting his arm around me and going, what do you want to do? And I just want to go to the pub. And the hospital I was diagnosed in was directly around the corner from my local, right around the corner from where I lived in Hackney. It's a pub called the Adam and Eve. It's a good old boozer. And I just went there, and it was, I think, as well, because I needed a drink, obviously, because you've just been told the news that your world's falling apart. But also, I knew a lot of people were waiting on my result. A lot of people knew how nervous I was, and that I was kind of convinced it was going to be cancer anyway. So I already, by the time I came out of hospital, had all of these messages from people, and I kind of just needed some time to decompress. I didn't want to go home yet. I didn't want to make it real yet. I just wanted to continue the day and just kind of start to process. So we went straight to the pub, a couple of bottles of Prosecco ordered, me, my mum and my brother, and literally my mum on the walk there rang my dad. My brother then started responding to messages on my behalf, was calling people on my behalf, and literally just said to everyone, she's at the Adam and Eve, she's going to be here for the rest of the evening. So loads of my best friends then just migrated and descended on the pub, and it was this really beautiful moment where it was just like, it felt really empowering, reassuring, and almost normalizing it, because I feel like if I'd have just gone home and sat in it I think it would have engulfed me in ways I can't really fathom. I think by delaying that process and actually going to the pub, being around my friends, letting them come, see me, talk to me, have a bit of a breakdown. My friend Lindsay Holland, bless her, Lindsay Holland, the legs of Instagram, turned up with one sock on, one sock off, because she literally just flew out of the house. And yeah, we just kind of all talked about it. And I think as well for the friends, it's that whole thing of, you know, it's terrifying for them as well. And we know as the cancer patient, a lot of the time you're reassuring them. So for them to see me fresh out of the hospital, telling them exactly what I know, it saved a lot of time, a lot of repetition. I could take it over a drink. I just remember standing there with the glass and like a glass of Prosecco, and literally everyone who was coming in was like, blah, blah. I'm like, this will be the making of me, not the breaking of me. I said, I'm not having it. Like there was just this defiance in me. And especially being surrounded by all the people that I loved, I feel like I might get emotional. But being surrounded by all the people that I love is like, of course I am defiant because I'm not leaving you. This is my life. This is my world. This pub garden, my friends. I just moved house. Like this was my freedoms, and I knew it would be temporary on hold, but I wasn't having it. And seeing my friends and that around me, and just having that moment, I'm really glad I did it that way, because I think everyone could ask the questions they wanted to. People could see that I was actually all right. And yeah, it was just, I'm really glad I did it. Like, I remember my dad turning up and just crying on my dad, and like all my friends just falling apart. But it was sad, but it was scared. We were all scared. And it was nice to be all scared together. And no one really having to put on the brave face and just kind of being like, okay, so this is what we're dealing with. And then, you know, the next day, that evening, packed a bag, went back to mum and dad's, slept in mum and dad's bed probably for 2 weeks. My dad, bless him, slept in the spare room, and I slept in with mum for 2 weeks, and was just back and forward to my flat and the hospital. Because we know as well, like when you get diagnosed with cancer, you get told you've got cancer, and then it's scans, it's bloods, it's this, it's that. It's such a really, for those first few days, it is life altering. Your life has changed. I didn't go back to work. I had a couple of days off because I needed to process it. And then I remember the nurse saying to me, it's going to take you about 3 weeks for this to really settle down and understand what's going on. And I make her right, because I was referred to a different hospital. I took a week off work, then I went back to work for a little bit. And you get this really weird false sense of security where you're waiting for things to start, but your life is still normal. You still look like you. Your friends are still the same. You still got your job. Nothing's really changed other than this news and this cloud that's hanging over you, like everything's about to change. But in that point, nothing has. And you're going through a weird like bubble of bereavement where you're trying to kind of grieve a life you know is about to change forever, but then it's still the same. And it's almost like, if I just stay in this moment, nothing will change, and I won't be sick, and I won't, you know, it's this weird balance. And I think for me, the moment when things started to really start to feel, they ramped up quite quickly after my referral went through, and I was referred to the Marsden, and I was very, very lucky to be taken on as a NHS patient. I know my privilege to be at that hospital. It rattled through quite quickly, and they were like, we need to get you in, and if you want fertility treatment, it has to be now. And I got fertility treatment a week. I had my eggs frozen a week before my chemo, so it did really feel like that moment of, this is the beginning of it all now. And I just remember going in with my sister, who we just found out was pregnant. So it was this really beautiful moment of, we were both starting on some kind of journey. And it started with me getting my eggs frozen and hers being already ovulated and like whatever, what's it called? Is it ovulated? Been developed? I can't find the word. I'm blaming the tamoxifen brain. But yeah, hers was already starting and mine was being put on hold. It was beautiful, really. And yeah, just walking into that room and being like, all right, little eggs, do your thing, because this is your last chance saloon. And a really fun fact before I round off my diagnosis story, really, is me and my sister sitting in the waiting room so naively and watching women go in to be sedated, and then watching men walk into another room, and we used to smile at them so eagerly, like, yeah, because we were like, they're going to watch them on the screen take the egg out, and it's like, oh no, darling, they're going to wank into a cup. So that was such a special moment also. watch other people's special moments. But for me, it's that bit no one really tells you about, and it's something I talk about a lot to anyone who comes to me for advice or people in my community. Is it's that aftermath, it's that between diagnosis and treatment, it's that feeling like nothing's changed but knowing everything has, and how you sit in it, because you sit in it. And yeah, that's a really weird time, and that's something I feel when I think about my diagnosis. I think about the moment, but I think about those 2 weeks more, and how I felt my world change in those 2 weeks.
Next up on Afterthoughts, we are going to be looking at stories that highlight perhaps the invisible impacts of a diagnosis. So let's hand over to Lauren for the invisible impact story.
During chemo, people talk a lot about chemo brain, and they talk about forgetting things, which obviously you do a lot because your body is focusing on repairing itself and just surviving the day, surviving the minute. So, you know, it wasn't unusual that I would try and explain to my mum that I'd really like potatoes, but could actually describe that I wanted chips. So I just kept saying straight potatoes at her until she understood it was chips, because the words would not come to me. And, you know, things definitely did improve after chemotherapy. I had a lot more energy than I did before. So my brain was working in a very different way. But I'm now year 5 after diagnosis, it will be in August. And I still feel very cloudy in my head a lot of the time. I have these bouts of clarity and energy, and I'm able to do a lot and say a lot. And, you know, you look at what I do for work and the speed at which I talk, you know, you wouldn't probably know it from the outside looking in that this is something that kind of haunts me on a daily basis. But the impact on what I say is my cognitive function since cancer has been quite significant, in that, you know, it's likely to be the tamoxifen that I'm on, which puts me into early menopause, which makes you a bit foggier. But, you know, I find myself struggling to remember events that have happened or really put a really genuine time scale on things. And, you know, especially if I'm tired, I lose words all the time, which it's fine if you're not on a public forum like Instagram or live broadcast or doing a podcast on a daily basis. You'll have heard from my earlier stories, ovulation was the only word that comes to my head. I remember vividly sitting on with Whitmore on BBC 5 Live. I'm a regular contributor, and I wanted to say extraterrestrial, and I kept saying extra, it wouldn't come out. And that's quite a common thing in my brain. But actually the world heard it, and I don't think anyone noticed, but I did. And what upsets me more than anything is that I value myself as a person. I'm all about connection and people, and I feel like that's one of my biggest skill sets, is that connection that I can build with people, and that bond. And I love humans, and I'm so interested in people, and I love hearing their stories. And what's happened a lot since my diagnosis and actually since recovery is I find myself walking into rooms where I see faces and I'm like, I have no, it's a very vague memory of how do I know this person? Have I met them? What's their name? Like before, I'd go into any set, I'd go into any work environment, everything. I would remember that person's name, where they were from, how I met them. Like it wouldn't even have to be something I'd have to dig. I'd remember song lyrics. I'm like, every single person who knows me really well will be somewhere and an obscure song will come on, and they're just like, how do you know all of the words to this song? Why are you this person? And actually now what I find that I love music, but actually the way that I love music's different. The lyrics don't click. Do you know what I mean? I can't roll off a Cardi B verse like I used to be able to do Nicki Minaj. It's like something has cognitively changed, and I'm hoping that, you know, it's not like I'm sitting on my bum, you know, not really doing much. I'm a busy person. I've got loads of plates that I spin, but I do struggle a lot more with numbers than I used to. I really struggle to read. Like everyone looked down, was like, I've read this many books. I'm like, I've read one book in a year, because to sit and focus on a page, I'm repeating it all the time, you know, like I'm having to go back over it. I'm finding that someone will be talking to me and my brain just all of a sudden goes blank, and I'm like, oh my fucking God, I've lost what they've said. And I have to like go back into it. And I'm like, when did this happen? Because that wasn't who I used to be. So for me, it's that invisible impact. I think people would look at me and just think, oh, Lauren's quite outgoing, she's confident. And I am in so many ways, but there's this weight of that something has shifted and that I'm not confident in my ability to retain information or recall things like I used to. And that's quite hard at times, because I don't want everyone to ever think that she doesn't care or she doesn't remember or I don't matter, I've not paid attention, because I do. It's just something has not clicked for a long, long time. And I'm not quite sure how to repair it. It's something I'm aware of and it's something I'd like to do. But I'm also really trying hard to be gentle with myself and understand that this is cancer. And, you know, some people bear scars. Maybe mine's more mental than physical.
Cancer definitely affects more than just the patient. The patient obviously is the one going through the treatment. They're the one who is experiencing the trauma firsthand, but also it affects those around us too. So this section aims to shine a light on some of those experiences. Lauren, a story about those around us.
So my family's pretty close. We are of Irish ancestry, so family is everything. I think I've got more cousins than I could probably count. But we've been through a lot as a family, and we're really, really tight. My relationship with my dad is a strong silent type, I'd say. Like, he's a man of few words. When they are spoken, they are dad jokes, and really good ones. And he is there. He's the backbone of our family, where my mum's the mouthpiece. And my brother's my younger brother. He's 5 years younger than me. We've always had a really nice relationship. He pretty much keeps himself to himself. But I adore him and I get on with him really, really well. And so, like, before I got sick, I just moved out of my family home. So me and my brother weren't sharing a house anymore. It came to the diagnosis. I knew leading up, I was told very clearly by the consultant that I would need to bring somebody with me, which is an alert system in my head anyway went off that I had something very wrong going on. But no one wanted to hear that, because of course they don't, because no one wants to think that someone they love has a disease and then that's trying to kill them. And so I remember saying it to my family, like, I've got my results. And like, this is the extent that no one really took it seriously, was that my brother went, I'll come. My younger brother, I'll come. I was like, wicked, I'm not going alone. And then it was only like the day before my mum went, oh, I'll come. Because I think some part of her brain kicked in and went, okay, maybe, what if it is? And on my diagnosis day, you know, we were sat outside the waiting room and one of the nurses was like, you know, as they always do because you're young, you'll be fine. She leaves all the bad news to the end of the day. You'll be in any minute. And then she walked past me at the end of the day and her face was a very different picture. But they called my name and I just remember standing up and my mum walking with me and I just went, Ryan, sit down. And it was this pure moment of pure protection where I was like, you're not being, I just, something in me was like, if this is what I think it is, I don't want you to be in that room when they say those words. I just don't, because it's something you can never take away. And as much as he's a grown man, he's still my little brother. And, you know, he wasn't in the room when they said the words. My mum opened the door of the doctor's office after they announced to me that it was cancer, and it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in that moment, especially that she panicked and all of a sudden was like, I need Ryan in the room, because she needed backup. You know, she needed someone to take it off of her, and open the door as Irish mothers do when they say the words without forming the words. I think you don't understand what they're saying, and just open the door and shout it down the corridor, Ryan, come in. So the whole corridor knew, and I think everyone knew. I don't know what she was thinking, but yeah, so he came in that room and I just remember looking at him and his eyes were really, really, he was like, he was about to cry and his chin was going, but he just grabbed my hand and just nodded at me and held it really tight, like, it's all right. And that's my little brother. And it was just that weird moment of being like, this feels like a role reversal and I don't know if I like it. But also having to give over to it a little bit. And, you know, I always do think about that moment and the impact that would have had on him, the fact that I had to ask and lean on him and ask him to contact my friends and family, that I had to, you know, be like, give over to it and be like, I can't do this on my own, actually, and I need you to kind of contact people on my behalf and act as a social secretary to me and, you know, take that position, if that's okay. Whereas before, he's my little brother and I just want to protect him and mollycoddle him, and probably didn't take him, like, to me, he will always be a teenage boy. He was like, how old was Rai at the time? It'd have been like 26. He's a grown man. But that was a moment in itself. But then also the following day, so I've always gone to mum for anything. I wouldn't really talk to my dad about mental health or like stuff around sex and things like that. Just something I'd always go to mum, and then she'd go to my dad and say, my dad would be there. It was just something that I never really did. And for my mum, as a cancer survivor herself, you know, two things were really coming into play, I think, in my mind. My mum had been through this before, and I think for her, she'd lost both her parents to the disease. She had encountered the disease. I think it was a lot. But then I think about my dad, and my dad also had lost his mum very young. My nan was in her mid-50s when she died of pancreatic cancer. She'd seen what we'd cared for my mum's parents through their diagnoses. He'd been 27 years old when his 26-year-old wife was diagnosed with cervical cancer. So he's been through a lot. But this kind of calm, ease and strength that he brought to the table, I still can't get my head around. Like, I would always go to mum if I need reassurance, I'd be like, mum, help me, and blah, blah, and give me advice. And all of a sudden it became my dad. My dad was that person. And the day after I got diagnosed, you know, I had to go to the hospital, as we know, for a myriad of scans and needles and all this jazz, biopsies and stuff like that. And my dad came with me, my dad and my brother, my sister, actually, we came off-handed. But it was my dad. I was sitting, I was really bad with needles at that point. Funny how cancer kind of makes you a bit more comfortable with them, but they needed to give me further biopsies, and put the little ball in you so they can track the tumor during treatment. And I said to my dad, will you come in with me? And he said, of course. And I cried and I went, but you're gonna see my boobs. And I just remember him going to me, I wiped your ass for a long, long time. I think I'm all right with seeing your boobs. And he did. He sat at the table with me while I had the biopsy done. I was in tears. I was scared, but he just held my hand and just looked at me. He's like, you're all right, you're all right. And it brought you back to this kind of baby state where you do become a child in some respects. That's how I responded anyway. So I had to kind of give over this strength and go, I need you. My dad came to every single appointment with me. He wrote down all my notes with my sister. He came to every single chemo, every single cold cap that I put on my head. He would rub my feet. He just made me feel really safe in a time when I didn't feel safe. And it wasn't ever something that we had said a lot about. We didn't talk about. He just was there. And never made me feel, I mean, God knows the time of work he had to take off and stuff. He never made me feel bad. He never made me feel like this was going any other way. And, you know, everything, my surgery, everything. My dad was there when I went in and he was there when I came out. And that has done something to our relationship, which I just feel like, you know, I think before I got sick that I always thought I was closer to my mum, but it's made me realise that I'm close, if not closer to my dad actually as well. But we just have a very different way of holding that space together. But I also worry a lot about my brother. And I don't think I need to, like, not in a mollycoddling way, but it's again going back to that protector thing where he had to see his big sister go to a place that was very sick and be privy to things that were really bad. And, you know, the night I went neutropenic and I just couldn't stop being sick, couldn't stop shitting, was pale as anything, and ringing the hospital helpline and them telling me, oh, you have to have passed your stool this many times in an hour before we take you in. And I'm like, I have doubled that, so get me in. But my brother having to be the one to sit with me and hold the bucket and make sure I was okay. And he had work and he was knackered, but he was there. And he's been privy to a lot of things that in an ideal world, as a protective older sister, I would never want him to see. And I do wonder what the ongoing impacts of that are, because my brother, as I said, keeps himself to himself and he don't talk to me about it. Whereas I'd want to be like, oh, right, like, what's going on? Tell me, are you okay? Blah, blah. Like, what is he carrying through that time? Because it must be quite heavy. But also maybe he's like, that's life. I don't know, because he's, again, a man of few words. But yeah, I just think a lot about when it comes to the others, you know, what I'd say is the immediate men in my life and the roles they played and the impact on them, for the weight that they really let me lean on them with, what that must still feel like for them, but also how grateful I am in those moments that they were there and that they were mine. Yeah, my boys.
Next up on Afterthoughts, we are diving into lost conversations. And in this episode, we have Lauren with us, who has been at the forefront of making sure that we are highlighting lost conversations for a number of years in the cancer community. And so we're going to hand over to Lauren to hear about a conversation that she thinks is lost for us at the moment.
When I got diagnosed, I don't think I really thought much about, you know, people's perception of me as a person. That became apparent during the diagnosis. But in recovery, I felt like I'd shed that skin and that I was very much back to being Lozza. And even so, as far as to start dating again and open myself up to the possibilities of love. And I started to date somebody back into 2019 that I was quite excited about, but was very, I'd say, it's emotionally unavailable. Whereas I'm very much heart on forehead. He was heart buried somewhere very deep within him that I had no access to and had locks on it. But yeah, didn't really say how he felt. And so I felt quite unsure and uneasy, as you always do at the start of dating, where you're like, where do I stand? Where do I stand? And we went and I pulled him for a chat like Love Island, and we went to the pub. And I was like, I want to talk to you about something. I'm really nervous to say it because, you know, I don't want it to be a big deal, and like, but I just need to get it off my chest. And he looked at me dead in the eyes and said, is your cancer back? And it was this heartbreaking moment of going, oh my fucking God, you're carrying around this perception of me as I am a cancer patient. I'm a walking time bomb. And what? Like, in what planet? Like, could it not just be that you're being a bit of a dick? And it really made me stop in my tracks and go, oh my God, some people, I will always be cancer girl. And I think that's quite upsetting. And I think it's something that people don't really mean to do, or a lot of the time don't realize that they do. But it is that head tilt thing, and it's a continuous one. And it's like, I understand to some extent, not really, but when I was very, very poorly and people looking at me with sad eyes, now I don't get it anymore. And I think it's a bigger conversation in the cancer world of how we are treated and being perceived. So as someone who's got a big platform, and someone who does a lot of work with different charities and organizations in support of the cancer community, because they are the bedrock of everything I do, I just feel like, how would I have felt, or how will my community feel, and what can I do to better the experience for them or air what they need airing? And then you get people who approach the cancer community like they are just a hospital number, that they're not attached. And I had a real big, another moment of being made to feel that I was purely a scar or a hospital number was the same year, beginning of 2020. And I was approached by a big charity casting agency. I don't think they had any idea how I was being approached, to be honest, but I was approached by a casting agency, and they were really like, you know, we'd really love to get you casting for this. It's all about survivorship. And although it would be like unpaid and on a really big platform, I was like, you know what, if I can really help shape survivorship and show what it actually looks like for a lot of people, then of course I'd love to be a part of that. I'd love to be a part of that conversation, because I don't think survivorship is one that actually happens often. It's normally, you know, we're showing the sad story so that we get money, but actually that's really damaging to anyone who's been affected by the disease. So I wanted to help. And they said, okay, well, we've got a couple of questions to ask you ahead of casting. And the only two questions they asked me were, have you had a mastectomy, and would you be willing to get your scars on television? And when I replied no, I never heard from them again, not even a courtesy, oh, you won't be right for us. And it made me really sit there and go, holy shit, it's happening again, where this version of cancer is being spun, and it's been spun by those who have the biggest clout and being spun by those who have the biggest impact, and it's not actually representative. And also, as someone who has been through a cancer diagnosis, to be made to feel like mine isn't valid, because I was lucky enough to keep my breasts. And when I say lucky enough to keep my breasts, the reason why I feel lucky is because in my head, the cancer's coming back one day, and then they could take the boobs off. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I fully don't expect to have a breast for the rest of my life, weirdly. But that's one way that I felt lucky. That's the only way I feel lucky, is that I'm alive. Doesn't mean what I went through is not hell. And it just kind of devalues the experience, and I think minimizes the experience. And I think it doesn't matter whether you were even someone who had to go through chemo, whether you're someone who had surgery, whether you're someone that had a bit of radiotherapy, no matter what experience, if you're taken into a room and be told you've got cancer, you're a cancer patient from that point. And yeah, you know, some roads are rockier, some roads people won't experience, but they are all as hard as the person that's dealing with it. Like, it's all relative. And it really upset me, because I'm like, okay, you're not seeing the human, you're seeing the scar. And that's what I find, especially in the world now that's opening up more in terms of community on Instagram. You've got these wonderful, like, people in our community who are setting up accounts to share their experience, to bear the experience of others, but they're naming themselves after their cancer. They've got big C in their titles. They're becoming their disease. And I very early on had to separate myself out, because I was like, I'm not cancer, I'm Lauren. Cancer's part of my lived experience. I want to better. But the danger that comes with, for your mental health, of identifying yourself as that, because it means, how do you pull away from that then? And then how do you stop people only seeing you as that disease, if that's the narrative that you're constantly talking about? But also how the external world treats you. So I think it's so important that, you know, cancer is a part of our body. It is your cells turning against you. It's the enemy, but it's also part of you. So it's being kinder to yourself rather than being at war with yourself. But then also being like, it is a part of me, it isn't all of me. And for other people to sit there and just see you as the person that had cancer is so derogatory, really. And I think I don't think people mean to do it. And, you know, as people who have been through the disease, we do talk and lament. I'm bloody here on this podcast 5 years later talking about my experience. It's such a big part of what we go through, but it's not all. It's like, when I used to talk about relationships, I used to talk about my ex that cheated on me 10 years ago. And all of a sudden I got to a point where I was like, why am I still talking about this? It's 10 years ago. And I don't want it to be the definitive thing of what my relationships are. That happened 10 years ago, but I've been in relationships since, I've dated since. This isn't what my like definition of it is anymore. And it's reframing that. And I think what's really hard is, as a person, when you're going through that reframing process and you're going through this trauma counseling and nurturing and finding coping mechanisms to help you deal with the fact that you've been through this trauma every day, and that you've stared death closer than you ever want to in your life. And for those who live with the disease, do on a day-to-day basis. You know, Rachel, my co-host who's not with us anymore, used to talk about, as a stage 4 cancer patient, feeling like a grenade, walking around with a pin out and just waiting to explode. And actually, if you feel that way, that's valid, but you don't want the world to treat you that way. I don't look at Deborah, my co-host, and go, she's a walking grenade, she's a pin. I look at her thinking, she is a powerhouse woman who's changing the way we talk about bowel cancer, who's dancing around, enjoying life to the fullest, and is really funny and competitive and crude. Like, she's my friend. That it's all of these things that I love about her, and glam. She's not cancer, she's Deb. And I think that's where the narrative needs to change. I don't think it's a conversation that's happening really in the places that it should. I think for those in the community, we get it. I think our friends who know us well enough get it. I think the people that are meant to be supporting us in a lot of cases don't. And I think where this is why the community has had to turn into what it has to on social media, because we're having to support ourselves in ways that isn't been provided. But actually what it does is it makes us very, it basically gives it gives some kind of, it opens us up to being seen as just cancer, because that's what we're talking about, to get the support that we need rather than being seen for who we are. And yeah, I think that's a really, really important conversation that needs to be happening, because we may have had cancer, but we're still 100% human, and we should be treated as such.
And now, Not Your Average is a chance for our storytellers to share a tale or two of something that sets them apart from other young adults who may not have experienced cancer. So, Lauren, over to you for Not Your Average.
An average night out for me before I got sick looked very different. It would be very full-on, hedonistic, up late, dressed up to the nines, binge boozing, pre-lash at mine. And, you know, all of a sudden, the moment that I realised that I wasn't going to have these average experiences as someone in their early 30s kind of was the weekend before I started chemotherapy. And all my flatmates were getting ready for this big Halloween party. So they were dressed up to the eyeballs. Some of them are slutty cheerleaders and like naughty little cats, you know, the usual, very mean girls. And they were all getting massively boozy in the house pre-lash. And it was this moment where they left and I didn't go. And it wasn't because I didn't want to. It was because I shouldn't, because I was about to start chemo and it wouldn't be wise. And it was this moment again of going, I'm not going to be doing these things that were just didn't think twice about. They were my every single weekends. They were, you know, my life as I knew it, the very freedoms of basics. I guess what we've gone through in pandemic, people are starting to understand a little bit what that feels like. But it was the first moment I realized that as a 30-year-old, this is the impact it's going to have on my life. And as someone who's a very social girl, it's the impact we're going to have on my life. And it was something that I became quite angry about, I guess, during my treatment year, because, you know, at the start when I was feeling quite well, if someone was going out for dinner or doing something, whatever, I could go, I could be there as long as I measured what I was doing and didn't do too much. I'm sure Alice will absolutely agree the amount of times I used to get told off by herself and Trekstock for doing too much too soon when I was at the start of my chemo. But I was like, if I don't do it now, I won't do it. And I did start to think this isn't going to be what your average early 30-year-old's life is, and it isn't going to be what my average life was. And, you know, it's not your average to, you know, before chemo started, when I was in fertility treatment and they were getting ready to harvest my eggs, it wasn't your average Friday night that I'd be in the pub toilet with one of my friends stabbing me with a needle in the stomach to make sure that I was going to get my eggs nice and plump. It was those weird moments where I just stood there and like, this isn't normal. And, you know, I can laugh at those moments now because at the same respect, like I was in them, but it was those days where I'm a really, as you know, with my work, I connect people. I love humans and I love people meeting each other and go, you'd love this person, meet this person. And it was these horrible moments of me being at home in bed, really sick, like coming down off the steroids and the bone aches kicking in from the injections for your white blood count, and just feeling really, really like, you know what it's like when you're just trying to survive the hour. And seeing pictures of my friends posting pictures of them with another friend that I'd introduced them to the week before I got diagnosed, for example, and seeing them going off and making these beautiful friendships and me not being part of it. And it all felt really insensitive and really bad, poor taste. And, you know, it's like, they're just posting pictures and they're having a nice time. But for you who's sitting on the outskirts, your average would be like the picture, oh my God, you guys are hanging out. Where are you? I'm coming. And that wasn't my average. And I became very jealous of my friends, very jealous of them living the life that I wanted. I missed, and I was quite articulate with them, which wasn't always easy. How often, as someone in their 30s, would you go to your friends, I don't like it when you post pictures of that person. It makes me feel jealous. You feel like a child. You feel really pathetic. And it's not nice, but also I was trying to manage my mental health and I knew the impact it was having. So I wanted to tell them so they could help me in ways that they could. I'm like, if you're going to do it, do it. I just really don't want to see it. Even if you have to block me from those posts, don't let me see it. And I just thought that's really sad. And that's something that, you know, most people in their 30s, early 30s wouldn't really have to experience, I guess. Unless you're going through a bad breakup and then you're like, honey, I don't want to see any pictures of my ex up on here. But at least you can block on Instagram. It's different when it's your friends. And also just finding you wanting to talk less and less to people. You know, finding that at the start of a diagnosis, everyone's there like, hi, I'm here for you, I'm going to come and visit you and stuff like that. And then as it gets to the middle and the end of your treatments, that's when you're at your weakest and that's when you're at your lowest. And that's when it's harder to kind of put up this facade of it's going to be fine, because you're literally like, how's my body going to get to another 2 chemos? And that's when I really found myself pulling myself back from people, because the less they were forthcoming with the offers of coming to see me or, you know, including me, I'd get really upset when things were organized but I wasn't invited because I was sick, and it would be like, but just let me turn it down, because I'd be sad that I couldn't go. But if it was at the end of one of my chemo cycles, as long as someone picked me up and dropped me off and kept an eye on me, I'd be all right. I mean, I was in my penultimate I was in my chemo number 4. I just changed drugs. I'd just gone on to the domestos of chemotherapy, docetaxel, which wiped the floor with me. And it was my first chemo, and I always know that when I'm in steroid period, I'm kind of all right. So my friend had her 30th birthday at the wonderful Soho farmhouse, and I was invited, and I went. And it took a lot. It took a village. It took, me being picked up at the station. Like, I had to get in London, just going a little bit. My friend picking me up, driving us all the way there. Having to tell the people who worked at Soho Farmhouse that I was in chemotherapy, that I was feeling quite vulnerable. They kept an eye on me. They took special measures for me. I knew where the nearest hospital was. I, went for dinner. The girls, I tried to drink a virgin porn star martini, and the acid from the fruit burnt my ever dying taste buds. And just having these moments of like, this is different. And I don't think anyone would ever really experience unless they were going through what I was going through, but I was there. And it was my decision to make. And I'm glad I made it, because even though I was really sick, and I went to bed at 9 o'clock and watched Straight Outta Compton and fell asleep, and then woke up at 2 and went to the other cottage and went while they were all drinking and dancing, and just got into bed and sat with them while they drink. I was there, and I was able to be part of it, and not in a way that made me feel poorly or weak or separate, in a way that just was like, this is me for now. And it was really lovely. I think it's watching from the outside in is harder than being half there. And that's kind of a situation, I guess, that isn't going to be an average for a person. Even now, like, all of our lives have been on hold during a pandemic, but we're all doing it together. Imagine doing this when everyone else is off doing their shit. It is really, really difficult. And I do look back at that time, and it makes me even more grateful now for the freedoms that I do have. So God knows what it's going to be after a pandemic.
Last on Afterthoughts, we move into the section where we pass over to our storytellers the opportunity to tell us a story about something amusing that happened from their experience of having cancer, because there are amusing moments, and it's important for us to share those as much as it is to share the harder ones as well. So Lauren, over to you for Don't Laugh.
I mean, this one is a don't laugh or you'll cry, but it was brilliant. Now, I used to have baths every single day when I was in chemo, because it helped my bone aches, helped me to relax my muscles. It was something that I took absolute pleasure in every single day. So this one particular day, I was feeling really achy, and I was like, I just want my bath. And I had these really expensive bath oils, and I'd run my bath, and I lit the candles, and there was little bubbles in there, and I was like, oh, I can't wait. And I got into the bath, and I relaxed. And I felt a bit of gas, and I let go of what I thought was a bit of gas, and a perfect little bit of poo floated its way to the top of my bath. It was like when I was in chemo, and it was that moment of going, when my bowels weren't great, basically. I didn't have control over them. And I was like, great. So I had to get out the bath and go and relieve myself. But by that point, the bath had gone cold. There was a little bit of solo poo floating around the bath. But I just had to sit there and laugh. And I just remember messaging my family group and go, I was running that bath. And they said, yes. And I was really looking forward to it. Yes. I sent them the bath emoji, the poo emoji, and the covering eyes emoji. And they all found it hilarious. I was like, today was the day that I shat in the bath. And that's my laugh. That was the thing that made me laugh.
Oh, Lauren, I need to know, how did you fish it out?
I can't remember. It's probably with a carrier bag, Okay. It wasn't, do you know what it was? Oh, it's going to be too much information, but I don't care. It wasn't like, because it was chemo poo, it wasn't like a solid bit. It was quite like stringy.
Okay.
So I just kind of had to get out the bath. There was no saving the bath. Yeah. It was like that bitty, weird poo. Oh. So I think it was probably a carrier bag situation for the bulk. And then, just letting the rest run, and then bleaching the shit out of the bath.
Like literally,
that was a moment.
As soon as
it was that moment of
story, I knew where you were going.
Yeah, no, I think I was really open with it on social as well.
I think I saw you a few days later, and you were like, Alice, I shit myself. And I was like, hang on. And you're like, I shit myself in the bath.
I shut myself in the bath. It was that moment. It was just the absolute moment of going, okay, this is cancer. This is cancer at its finest. But
everybody who's had cancer has a poo story. Everyone has a poo Everyone story. Has one.
Yeah, everyone does. And do you know what? What is more humbling than that?
Right.
That is like when people sit there, people go to, like, I've had somebody go, oh my God, I'm so happy I've met you. Like, I love what you're doing. I'm like, I shat in the bath once, pal. Like, I'm not that great.
And on that note, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on AfterThoughts. I feel like that is the perfect place to end this episode.
Happy ending.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a delight to have you on. And yeah, as you know, I'm a massive fan of your work. And yeah, we've loved having you.
I'm waiting for.
Honestly, thank you so much for asking me, guys. Like, Jen, when I got the call and you guys, like, the email and you're like, would you want to come on? I was like, yes, please. Like, I love what you guys are doing, and obviously love you both individually very, very much. So it's been so nice to actually see your human faces, even though it's on screen, and I've be part of this. I'm so proud to be part of this. So thank you for letting me come on here.
Alice, so there was Lauren. Those were Lauren's stories. Can we just have that wow moment a little bit to say that Lauren came and was part of the podcast, and like, just so I'm going to use something you say quite a lot, and I like it's become and I think it's a completely genuine thing, because I think you're 100% right when you say this. How generous was Lauren? She was generous with her time, but with her stories, and so like kind to give us to offer up these stories and give them to our listeners.
Absolutely. And there's so much in there that we can unpick, and so much in there that I think will resonate, and that a lot of the cancer community will recognise. And I think that's one of the great things about Lauren, and I think that's why why the cancer community has kind of taken her like under their wing so much, and why she's become kind of this like powerhouse for the cancer community. It's because people see so much of themselves in her, and she's really become this voice for people who, you know, are often, as we've kind of as we've kind of spoken about today, you know, people in the cancer community can sometimes be taken advantage of, and Lauren's determined to not let that happen, because she really cares about the people in the community, and she really wants to make a difference, and I love that.
And I just really admire, like, she, like, the sense of that she looks at the way that she can support this community, the way that, like, what is her role? And she is the type of person you want to get behind. She is the type of person you want to go, look, how can help you do what you do, because what you do is so special for the
how can we make a difference? How can we, like, collectively make a difference? I think.
So, Alice, what would be your afterthoughts on today's episode?
Do you know what? I think my afterthought on today's episode of AfterThoughts is this representation of only certain types of survivorship that seems to exist. It really, really boils my piss that is the world that we're living in. Yeah. Sorry to make you laugh. I'm going to put my arms in the air and be angry about it. But, you know, I do think that the media has this really stale idea of what a cancer patient looks like. And there's so many of us who are trying to change that. But I just wonder how long the media will rely on these boring tropes. And, you know, I think as a community, we have to do everything we can to shake up these tropes. And that's why I love people like Lauren and Chris Helenga and Leanne Perot and Brad Goodger. There's so many people, like so many other people I could sit and reel off doing amazing things to shake up these stereotypes, because they are boring, they are trite, they are done, and we need to, as a community, keep working to just get rid of them, because they're boring. Not everybody dies from cancer, and the people who do die from cancer don't lose a battle or lose a fight, and we just the media need to do better, basically, and it makes me cross that they don't.
But it's also interesting of going, it's still the story, the narrative that people want to hear, and it's the narrative that they want to hear, or don't want to hear, or want to kind of, like, it's the thing that they want to go, oh, that's the narrative of cancer. That's the way that we fundraised for it. We need to have a tragic story.
That's a really good point.
But it's also
responding to what works.
But it's also, interestingly, the inaccessible story, because a lot of the time those are the stories where people go, oh, it's a cancer narrative, I don't want to think about it, because it's going to be a narrative of this arc of either of death or a phoenix, like rebirth, and like it's a case of going, like, why is that? Why, like, people are turned off to those. And so therefore what Lauren was saying earlier about going, like, making sure that people are seeing those humans and going, these are human beings, they like this, they like that, and things, and connecting with them, and then going, and they've had cancer as well, and that's part of their narrative, but it's not all of their narrative. I just thought that was so important.
Absolutely. What was your afterthought on today's episode?
Oh, I'm sorry, I've like kind of rambled into your afterthought as well.
All relevant.
It was kind of, I was very much taken by that as well, and I think for me there was a lot of stuff in there about the identity, and she even used the phrase "cancer girl," and we had a line in a theatre show we made a couple of years ago called "The Other Side of a Hurricane," which was just a two-hand with myself and another artist who'd had cancer, and one of that there was we wrote a lot of stuff in response to the issues around identity in the young cancer community, and how we feel like you're branded by yourself and by others, and the sense of when you talk and when you are in the cancer community and might tell cancer narratives, that you get branded as that. And we had this whole thing about the fact that I have had that in the past, and have kind of have tried to not talk about cancer because of the fear that in the art sector particularly I get branded as cancer boy, and that
sounds like a really shit superhero.
It does, doesn't it? Shitty superhero. But it is interesting of going, but one of the things, not to steal the script that was sculpted for that, about the fact of like what in that piece we talked about going, of acknowledging, well, actually it's not just, it's part of me, but it's not all of me. And I think I hold on to that of going, like, I can't, like, if that's how you see me, then that's okay, you just don't know me well enough. Like, I really hold on to that, and I keep thinking, I'd just love to see that show again, you know. So it's really taken like a lot and prompted a lot of thoughts, actually, as ever AfterThoughts does. And I am so grateful to Lauren for coming on and sharing her stories, and I hope our listeners are getting that same thing of it prompting these new thoughts, new bits of learning, and as we enter that, kind of continue on this process as we've been talking about.
It's always, it is a process, and it's an ongoing process, and that is okay.
So let's say thank you to Lauren, thank you to our listeners, and we look forward to being in your ears again soon. If today's episode of AfterThoughts has brought up any thoughts or feelings that you'd like to speak to someone about, we really recommend grabbing a cuppa with a friend or dropping them a message. There are tons of charities out there who can help you if you've been through cancer and need a bit of extra psychological support.
Thanks so much to Trekstock for supporting another series of AfterThoughts. Trekstock helps young adults diagnosed with cancer to get moving again after cancer stops them in their tracks, and the work they do is incredible. Find out more at trekstock.com.